You are listening to Rip It Up, the Renovations podcast.
Hi, I'm Kate. I run the Instagram page Victorian Math Mine.
And I'm Jenny. I run the Instagram account Workers Cottage.
This podcast is all about renovation and interiors from the renovator's perspective. We've been through it a few times between us and it hasn't scared us up.
In fact, we loved it. So if you are planning to do up your own home, you can expect to hear lots of advice from our own experience, along with plenty of tips and inspiration.
In today's episode, Kate and Jenny are going to take you through some key tips for how you can stay on budget during your renovation. It doesn't have to compromise quality and it doesn't have to compromise aesthetics. But keeping on top of your budget through your whole renovation is sure to save you some money in the end.
Welcome back to the podcast. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Jen.
This is a topic that we get asked about a lot.
A
lot.
And for good reason,
to the point where I don't know why we didn't do it earlier. Like, why did we wait until episode 18?
I feel like we've given nuggets of this in every episode. Yeah. I think, that was the intention. That was some of the feedback we got, wasn't it? There was such great tips and like how to say. Anyway, I won't ruin the surprise. Go ahead, intro the episode. What are we doing?
My favourite feedback is people saying that they're taking notes.
Yeah.
I love that. Sitting down, listening to the podcast, taking notes. If you do that, let us know. I hope you are. That's really helpful. Anyway, we are talking about doing your renovations on a budget, or budget-friendly renovations. It sounds like we're trying to do the impossible, but no, it actually can be done. And it might not be that you do it in exactly the time that you want. Anyone who's ever done some kind of project management will be familiar with this triad of time, cost, and quality. So if you're reducing...
have any two.
Yeah, you can have any of the two, but you're unlikely to get all three. So if you're reducing the budget, that might mean that maybe you're extending the time. Maybe you're considering where you want to go for super high quality versus where you can scale back. But it's possible.
Definitely. But I think we have a few key pointers kind of jotted down to step through that'll help people kind of do it, yeah? So one of the things that we brought up a good few times actually, and especially when we were talking about the kind of building process and all that, was about our budget trackers. Do you remember we spoke about that? And like we had like really detailed Excel spreadsheets or whatever spreadsheets you want to use. But the key thing, I suppose, when you're trying to maintain kind of the budget and trying to make it budget friendly or, save costs somewhere, is setting the budget in the outset, setting it, knowing what it is, talking with it if you're in a renovation with someone, and starting maybe with your kind of wish list of everything you really want, totting it all up in as much detail as you can, and then seeing how far off you are.
Because you can't know if you're going over budget if you don't know what you're spending, and you can't know how much you have left if you're not tracking it really carefully. And it sounds painstaking, but laying it out super clearly, line by line, and planning it in advance is really genuinely going to help you get what you want, and then know where to pull back and where it's not worth it for you.
Yeah, and one thing we said before when we were talking about our budget trackers is say you have a tab for every room in the house, or every type of finish or every trade or something like that. You start to kind of identify really quickly, wow, I'm way over in lighting, or I'm way over in flooring or tiling or bathroom fittings, and you might be downgrading your, Lefroy Brooks or Villeroy Boch like bathrooms down to, more basic brands or whatever, and that's fine too. But like, it's finding out where you have that wiggle room versus where you've gone way over, and maybe kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul to get the whole thing to tally up.
Yeah. So here's how I did it. So I put my budget tracker on my website, jennysheehan.com, so you can find it there. But the way I did it was I did the same as you. I had a tab per room, and then I had two prices for everything. So I would go room by room. So say if I started in the kitchen, I would have the cost for, say, kitchen cabinets, the cost for the quartz, the types of countertops I wanted, the cost for the fridge I wanted, the cost for the, various different appliances that I wanted, interiors, inside of the fittings, all that kind of stuff. Like every single thing, down to the saucepans, down to the knives and forks that I was going to buy, because like all those little bits at the very end, you need money left over for that. Like you need to remember that you have to
kit out your house.
Exactly. And that's easy.
Especially if it's your first time doing a house or owning a house, like that you were renting up until this point, so you may not own all that stuff.
So do you want a nice blender? Is your entire kitchen based around having a lovely KitchenAid mixer or something like that?
Yeah.
It's like every single thing, like sit down and be so painstaking about everything. And then I had two prices for each one. One was the kind of more low cost price for something that I would settle for. Maybe it was the cheaper kettle or, you know, the silverware from IKEA that would get me through until I wanted to buy my kind of permanent crockery or whatever it might be. And then I had the price for the dream item that I really wanted. And I had a total totted up at the bottom at the end of each of those. So I would know what my entire kitchen would cost, my dream kitchen would cost, and what my entire, you know, kitchen that I would settle for would cost. And then as I bought things, I would put in the actual price that I spent. And then I did all sorts of things with like clever, you know, conditional highlighting that was showing me, because I love Excel. It was showing me where I was going over budget. And then I'd be able to see from the rest of the stuff that I was buying, I was like, okay, well then I can't splurge out on marble countertops. I'm going to have to get quartz. Like that's not an actual example, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you highlighted a really key thing there, because you were saying like, you know, the silverware or whatever, you had a dream one, and then you said whatever basic IKEA one or wherever will do you for a time. And it's important to know those trade-offs and the trade-offs you're willing to make, but it's also important to know the trade-offs you should make in terms of like a big renovation kind of, and the order of works, we'll say. So you can't retrospectively go in and put in wall insulation because it's there and it's plastered over, and you know it's complicated to go back and do that stuff. You can't rewire.
And it will be more expensive in the end.
Exactly.
Like some things you can spend money on, you know, a temporary solution and then get the upgraded one later. Some things you will lose money overall if you go back and do them because it's more expensive to go back and do them at a later stage.
You're essentially doing everything up to first fix, you know, can't be done after the fact. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. You know, if you really want wall insulation, you just got to cough up and pay for it at the start. But then you may put off something else, like a finish that might be easy enough to change out in a couple of years if you have the money. So finding that kind of trade-off and knowing what kind of things in the major renovation do you have to put in provisions for if you're not immediately finishing that job or doing it, you know, or putting a finished item in.
Exactly. And listener, if you don't know what first fix is, go back and listen to, I think it was either episode 1 or episode 2. It's basically everything behind the walls.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the wiring goes, where the plumbing goes, the insulation, everything you don't see.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Talking about wall insulation, actually, like, so we did all the walls in our last house, and it was a major job because it was kind of chipping off old lime plaster, insulating, and then replastering over it, and then obviously repainting over it. So if I didn't do the insulation, then I never would have done it in that house. So that's important to know. But then one thing we didn't do immediately was insulate the attic. I mean, it would have been ideal to do it immediately, but we just didn't have the money left in the pot right then. So like it took till the next summer or whatever, and then all attic insulation stuff went on special. So we went out and did the rollout insulation ourselves. So that was something that we could put off. In this house, when we're doing the renovation now, I love the idea of having a really like efficient A or B rated home. But like, I'm not sure we'll get there immediately, like with this renovation, depending on cost. But something that we're thinking about putting in provisions for, but maybe not putting in, is solar panels. So maybe putting in, you know, the wiring and stuff that we'll need, and maybe potentially space for battery storage, but not actually putting in the solar for now. So things like that, you could kind of have trade-offs and, you know the provisions are there. It might not cost a massive amount more to put in the provisions now, but we won't put in the big spend of actually putting in the item right now.
So then actually planning your dream house, even if it's way out of budget, and just knowing how far out of budget it actually is really helpful, because once you have it all worked out, and once you're like, well, actually, I don't necessarily need, you know, solid wood flooring, for example. That wasn't a priority for me. I'm happy to go with a laminate or an engineered wood or something like that. And then knowing where you make those tweaks, actually, maybe you're like, okay, well, actually, if we, you know, it's only going to take us 5 years to save for this dream thing that I really do want. And if I cut back here and make a plan for installing that now, then I can have it in 5 years' time.
Exactly. And if you're still happy in the house you're in and you want to stay there, then it's the time to do it. Maybe not directly at the start.
So all of this is to say that there's a big upfront piece of work involved, isn't there?
Yeah.
And just really detailing out that plan. And when I say down to the last, I mean, like, I was nearly including toilet roll in my budget.
Toilet roll holders.
It's just everything.
I was going to say toilet roll holders, but no. Toilet roll.
I did have my toilet roll holders in there.
I think toilet roll is something you should never scrimp on. Always buy the better toilet roll.
And if you're ever in Kate's house, go to the toilet there. It'll be a luxury.
Yeah. Coconut scented aloe vera toilet roll.
3 ply. But yeah, even I definitely had my toilet roll holders in there. I had my coffee maker, like all the little bits. And doing that exercise twice, I've been like, what's the cheap one, or at least the budget one that I'm, the lowest I'm happy to go, and then what's the most expensive one, and then planning out if there is something big I want to do and I can't afford it now, what could I put in place now that will make it possible in a few years down the line is really helpful.
Yeah. So, okay, my renovation is going to cost me a load of money. So where else can I save besides kind of scrimping at the start and kind of trying to fix my budget tracker to suit my tastes? But like, what else can I do, I guess?
You can save on labour costs.
Yeah.
In certain areas.
Yeah, DIY.
So where can you DIY?
Yeah.
Because that's, aside from buying actual items, it's the cost of getting people to do the work is the huge, huge cost. And in some areas, it's not only worth it, it's necessary. And in some areas, you can probably do a chunk of it yourself.
Yeah.
Which you did.
The stuff that's safe to do, like, I wouldn't go rewiring a house, obviously, or anything like that. But like some of the stuff at the finish, at the finish line, like that we don't necessarily have to finish immediately. But we can take the house back maybe at builder's finish if you're kind of willing enough for kind of painting and that kind of finishing side of it. I think that's definitely worth it, like to try and do DIY stuff. But then I see a massive value in finishing as well. Like, there's really, really good painters. So if you're not super confident, it mightn't be the thing you want to take on. And that's cool too. But like for me, DIY is definitely somewhere we saved a lot of money on our last renovation.
And I think there's a whole other episode in this because we're not exactly the same on this one. I am not as DIY savvy as you are, and I'm also not as up for it as you are because I just wouldn't paint the house myself. I just pay for it. And I'd probably save the money somewhere else. But I think the lesson in that is that really think carefully yourself about, like, are you actually up for it? If you are, there's a huge satisfaction to be derived from doing it yourself and from upskilling in certain areas and learning how to do something and, looking back, I mean, like, I did this, I painted this room and it looks really good. That's...
Yeah, there is a lot of well, for me, like my staircases, because I stripped both my staircases in the last two houses, it was a big chunk of change to get that done. And like rightly so, there's a lot of labour in it, but I take a lot of pride in like walking up and down. And a staircase in an old house is something that's always going to be there. Like no one will never rip out that original staircase because they're protected anyway. But like, I don't know, that's something that I took a lot of satisfaction in. Painting the house.
You did also cry, I should point out, at one point, right?
I cried multiple times.
Like there were tears.
My husband and I fought
just to be clear.
a lot. Like we fought a lot when we painted the house. It was a lot to take on. I'm not sure I'd do it again with kids. It's a lot. It's more than you think. Like, so my advice would be if you want to paint the house yourself, great. But maybe get your builder, if you're doing a major renovation, to get a painter to do a basic spray finish of everywhere. Pick your white or off-white and just do absolutely everything. So then you're not under pressure to paint colours anywhere for a while. And you could do it room by room and tip away at it. But I would say like painting a whole house from fresh plaster, mist coat, and then 2 coats of colour and ceilings and everything and joinery, woodwork, doors, everything. Oh, it's a lot. It's a lot.
You wreck your shoulders too. Like whatever about the mental challenges of it. Like physically, it's a very demanding task.
Yeah, and high ceilings and stuff as well, especially in old houses, can be quite dangerous. So yeah, like I love it. Will I do it again? Budget dependent. I'm hoping not to, but like it could come to at the end of the build that like that's where we're going to save. So we'll see when we get there.
I remember years ago, I went into my grandaunt's house and she was well into her 70s, if not her 80s. She's 100 now. She turned 100 this year, my lovely grandaunt. And I walked into her house in the front door. She had one leg on the windowsill of the return of her landing and the other foot on the banisters. And she was painting the ceiling. I was like, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
So it's possible.
Yeah,
but it's
definitely
a lot of hard work.
Yeah, definitely. I remember just before I had my second baby, I was like really heavily pregnant. I'd say I was maybe 2 weeks off or something. And my mom was up and she's in her mid 70s. And me and my mom were like wire brushing all our front railings and painting them. And like we had so many people walking past, especially men, being like, not okay with this. Like I should feel like, I feel like I should help or what. But we got there. So yeah, that's a good tip as well, actually, getting people involved that for your DIY.
Yeah, just offer pizza.
Yeah, bit of a trade, like maybe you're a solicitor and I don't know, someone else is really like hands-on. Maybe you could trade, skills or something or skill sets or something.
That's a brilliant idea. Yeah. I'll make your wedding cake if you do my garden.
Exactly.
That's how I got my garden done.
Yeah, that's a great
shout out to JV Gannon. Brilliant landscaping. He did my lovely living wall and I did their wedding cake.
It is a great way of doing it, actually. Getting all your family.
before we move on from that one, how did you decide what to DIY? Like what was worth it and what wasn't?
Yeah, the stuff that was safe to do, I suppose. Electrics, gas and plumbing are just a bit dangerous. And I suppose the failures in those could cost you a lot of money, whether it's a fire or a leak or whatever. Exactly. So like you have to be very careful about what you DIY. And I think what we DIY is kind of more the upfront stuff. So when we buy an old house to kind of get us over the line till we renovate, I would say. And other than that, I would say it's the finishes, like the kind of, you know, like I said, painting, sanding the floors, you know, all those kind of more finishing aspect after second fix. We've done a little bit of tiling, but I wouldn't maybe do really expensive tiles. We did basic kind of subway tiles in a shower area or something like that, you know. So I don't know, I think those finishing things after second fix are some of the stuff that we took on. And gardens, I think, is one that a lot of people will take on because a lot of people really love gardening, and it's not something you need to do immediately after you've done your renovation. It might not even be the time to do it, like to plant and stuff, depending on the time of year you finish. So that's something you can put off, and it's definitely something you can tackle yourself with a few friends and a few slabs of beer and pizzas, you know, on a warm day to help you out. Because it's really just grunt
Steve,
work.
if you're listening, you're welcome for your garden. And I really enjoyed the beer. Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question on this, though, is tools. Because, like, you want to make sure, you mentioned, for example, sanding the floors. Like, that requires some specialist equipment.
For sure,
and
yeah.
you want to make sure that whatever you are taking on, that you either have access to the tools or, like, buying them isn't going to offset the cost that you're saving.
And you know what we found? We bought lots of tools throughout the years, and we still have a lot of them. But, like, some of them we just weren't using, so we resold. But we always bought kind of good brand tools. Good brand tools tend to hold their value and they'll resell well. If you buy kind of crappy tools, it might do for one job, but you'll never resell it. There's no resale value. So we tended to buy, like, you know, Bosch or DeWalt or whatever, the kind of slightly higher end brands as opposed to just the basic stuff. And we resold it for like quite a chunk of what we paid for it. Now, when it came to sanding floors, that's very specialist, very heavy duty equipment. So we usually rent it there. And a lot of rental places will charge you for the sandpaper, you know, the consumables to do with that machine. And that's the kind of watch out. It's the consumables that will catch you because the rental of the actual equipment is quite cheap, relatively speaking. And then when you're hitting a load of nails, sanding your floors and all those sandpaper sheets keep popping, you know, they're a couple of euros a pop, you know, like they start adding up very, very quickly. So I suppose knowing the cost of the rental of the item plus the consumables, you know, all will add up. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all that to say, there is money to be saved, but it is at a pretty significant cost, I would say, personally, physically, mentally.
Yeah, for sure.
So think carefully about doing it, but it is possible.
Yeah, and then I suppose part of kind of DIY is kind of upcycling as well.
Yeah.
Now, we've spoken about this before.
Bargains.
We love, like, you know, second-hand, rear-end shops.
Love it.
And I think there's a lot of money to be made here and saved here, like, if you're savvy. Like, and also, you might have some stuff already, or family might have some stuff. And it's amazing what kind of an upcycle can do on an old kitchen, putting new hardware on it and repainting it. Or, you know, sanding down an old yellowy pine table and getting a nice stain on it or something like that. So there's a lot of work in it, but there's a lot of value in it as well, if you're into that kind of thing.
Kitchens are such a great one because, like, you might have, like, we spoke a good bit about this in previous episodes, especially our thrifting episode. If you go back to that one, but kitchens are a brilliant one because it's not difficult to repaint a kitchen. Like, I don't think I take on repainting. I don't think I do repainting a whole room necessarily, but I would take on the task of painting a kitchen if I knew I was going to save significant money, because, you know, you sand it down, you put on an undercoat. You've got 2 coats to go and then a bit of a finish and it's done, and you can, you know, remove the cabinet doors very easily. You spray them if you have an area, spray them in a spray gun. It's not that hard. And as you said, they're putting on some additional hardware, like, you know, extra knobs, extra handles, whatever it might be. Yeah. You have a transformation that you could be paying upwards of 20 grand for a new kitchen. Do you know, for potentially a few €100. Like, it's an amazing place to start. Yeah. The other thing that we mentioned this before as well is that you can actually paint tiles. So anyone who's there sitting looking at tiles that they really don't like, and you want something fairly plain, or, you know, you can paint a design on it if you're very artistic, but you can repaint tiles, no problem. So that's a huge cost saving area, because getting tiles ripped out and replaced can be very expensive. So unless you want, like, specific new tiles and you just want a bit of a refresh, that's a great place to just kind of upcycle.
Yeah. Yeah, painting kitchens, wrapping kitchens, painting tiles, and even like a tile splashback. If you got a really basic tile, you know, redoing that yourself. You can buy the adhesive premix. You can buy the grout premix, like a splashback in a kitchen or something like that might, you know, really change the whole kitchen space, especially in my case where it's like 70s patterned tiles. But like that's quite easy to do. And yeah, and it's a perfect little tester to take out, like if you wanted to try tiling, like, or something like that.
Yeah. And you said grout there, you can redo the grout very easily. You can put in coloured grout. So like if you plain white tiles, adding a coloured grout could be a really cool way to give that a bit of an uplift.
Or even just regrouting, right? Like if you had really old tiles and they were just discoloured and yellow and grease stained or whatever, like just even regrouting them could give them a whole new lease on life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And much cheaper than ripping them out.
Definitely.
And then furniture. I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen a woman love a furniture bargain as much as you. But
I know, yeah.
I'm second.
Sometimes I buy shit that I don't need, though, you know. Husband like, we need this. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it was just too good to pass up. I'm like looking at like this mid-century modern antique phone table. You know the little phone tables we used to have? It's on adverts at the moment. And I'm like, I don't need it. But it's so cool. Like, do you know, we don't have phone tables
like they have
anymore.
A little bench beside them.
You have your whole, like, little seat.
Chat to your friends for hours and
no.
they get screamed at by your parents.
Yeah, and the corded phone, like, so I just thought it was so cool. I thought it could be cool for a little nook or whatever in the house, but I don't need it. I don't need it, but I really want it.
Yeah, so it's definitely a place to save money. And especially, like, there's two areas I would say save money for kind of repurposing old furniture or upcycling. One is if you've moved into a bit of a wreck and before you start doing it up, you know, you just need something temporary, definitely go and check out secondhand furniture there before you go splurging on something new. Better for the environment, it's more sustainable. And, you know, maybe you find something that you love and that you can upcycle that will go into your kind of forever home. Or, you know, once you've moved in and you're looking to save a bit of money, is there something really, really fabulous you can find on Dundee or adverts or whatever? And again, go back and listen to our thrifting episode. I think maybe it was episode 12. Loads of tips in that.
And also like recovering old furniture as well, if you have it, it's decent. Like I remember getting a free sofa in our last house. So before we renovated, we were sitting on garden furniture for quite a bit of time. And I was like, please, can we just get a sofa? Like my husband was like, no, it's a waste. Like we're going to be moving out in a few months. And I was like, yeah, but we have a few months that we need to sit down in the evenings. And I'm kind of sick of sitting on garden furniture. So I got a free sofa on adverts and it was a free Boch concept sofa.
I remember.
And the person, like, it was actually pretty good. Like all the wadding, everything. It wasn't ancient, but they had gotten a red wine stain in it or something and never came out properly. So they just gave it away for free. So I went and collected it and gave them a bottle of Prosecco or something like that. Collected in a go van for €8 or €10 for the hour or something. And it was really nice. But it was so nice that I was like, when we were moving out, I was like, I'd really like to just recover this.
Yeah.
So it was such a lovely sofa. We just didn't have the storage and stuff for it. So I paid it forward and gave it free to someone else.
Yeah. I got my temporary one. It was a beautiful corduroy one and it was for, I think, €50 I got it from what was the NCBI, what is now Vision Ireland.
Yeah.
And they're unreal because you can get a delivery service there. They'll come and pick up your furniture as well if you need to get rid of stuff, as long as it's pretty good quality.
No, but that's great. I think any of those secondhand, whatever, and just think about recovering them if they're really good pieces, but they're maybe just, you know, tattered in terms of the fabric. But then also salvage. So salvage in general, not just for furniture, but I'm talking like for old houses like this, like where you might need to replace doors, internal doors and stuff like that. You think your doors are like completely different, but like there's a million, but no, like there's thousands of houses with the same 4-panel doors or 6-panel doors or whatever kind of style, kind of old doors if you have a Victorian house or one of these kind of houses. So we got kind of a lot of salvage stuff. We got bifolding doors between our living and dining space. They have all types of kind of internal doors, window frames, you know, stuff like that. So those salvage yards are definitely worth a look, and you get it for a fraction of the price if you have a good joiner or whatever to fit that stuff.
Architectural salvage yard.
Yeah, and Max as well in Chapel got it. Yeah, but absolute. I think we were quoted, from memory, 3,500 for the triple bifolding doors in our last house, just to make them kind of new for the space. And we got them on salvage in a salvage yard for €350 for the three of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so we just had to pay, like, we had to get like new hardware and stuff like that, and then we just got them refitted to the opening. The opening wasn't cut yet, so we could adjust the opening slightly to fit exactly for the doors. But major savings to be had for stuff like that.
Fabulous.
Yeah, yeah. So then I suppose, besides kind of upcycling and restoring furniture and stuff like that, there's a lot of, if you're not doing a major renovation, say like the ones that you and I did, you can also have kind of high impact, kind of low cost stuff as well. Like if you're not rewiring and replumbing and all that, like paint and wallpaper, better lighting, like we said on kitchens, replacing the hardware and just repainting and stuff like that. There's a lot of those high impact, low cost stuff if you're not going through a major renovation. Like paint can really transform a place. And if it's a temporary thing, you might not want to invest in really expensive paint, but just, colour match to whatever thing you want for now. Paint and wallpaper can make such a huge difference. And in our case, we wallpapered some of the rooms just because we weren't refinishing the walls straight away. So say for the kids' room, and like there's such nice wallpapers now, and they're not expensive. They'll cover over really, bumpy walls or bad walls or kind of peeling paint. So that's a really good idea. And lighting can actually make a huge difference as well, because sometimes you might, buy a place that was an old rental or something like that, or might just have all horrible cool white bulbs, and then changing that lighting.
Lighting is the most instant transformation,
isn't it?
I think,
yeah,
possible. Like it's just getting rid of naked bulbs, switching out bulbs from white light to a softer, kind of more yellowy light, going for diffuse lighting, adding a few lamps. Like you can have a totally different room. Yeah, with some good lighting.
Yeah, and definitely listen to our lighting episode on this, because we go through everything from like the warmth of the bulb to, how bright it needs to be for the space and the types of lighting. But I think like changing lighting can change the whole ambience of a room, the look of a room, the colour of the wall. It can change the colour of the paint on the walls, you know. So all those things I think are kind of low cost but high impact stuff you can do.
And wallpaper is easy to put up these days. It used to be a bit of a faff. No, it used to be a huge faff, and now it's only a bit of a faff because they've changed the way you do wallpaper. You put the paste on the wall now, just make sure you buy paste the wall wallpaper, and it's much, much easier to put it up, and it can be really low cost. So this is, I suppose, if you're either in a house that you're not planning to stay in forever, it just needs a bit of a facelift. Those are all things that are amazing ways to save money, or you've moved in and you have to wait for a while until you get your renovation done, and you don't, it does need a bit of an uplift for you to be happy in your home for the while that you're there.
Same, like my little room I'm in now, my little office room, like that patterned wallpaper, like this all the walls in here were just fiberboard. Like it was horrendous beforehand, but just like I was able to paper straight over those for now, and it looks actually really nice. I feel like do we need to actually do it in the renovation? I know we need to do other stuff to the roof, so possibly it'll knock on anyway. But like,
that wallpaper is fab.
And it was really, like, it wasn't expensive wallpaper either. So, like, things like that make a huge difference, I think.
And you are in your office room. This is a little teaser for what's coming up, because we're recording virtually today. Usually we're together. Yeah. But we're recording virtually today on video call, because we're going to be doing it soon with a special guest. So keep your very special peeled for future episodes. So we're practicing. Okay, so paint, wallpaper, better lighting, and then you said it earlier, replacing like the knobs on your kitchen, especially your bathroom. We've said this many times, bathroom vanities are off the wall expensive. I don't understand why, but you can just swap out the knobs or paint them or whatever, and you have an instant kind of bathroom refresh. And any other hardware, like, just great for an instant one. Another one as well that you had mentioned before is rugs.
Oh yeah,
changing out your rugs.
Like if your floors are really bad, or you can't afford to change them out right now, or you've given them a light sand and just kind of seal them with a clear varnish, then big large area rugs will kind of hide a multitude. Yeah.
Again, something you could potentially find low cost in a secondhand store, but it'll need a good cleaning. Yeah. It's hard to get the smell out of fabric.
It's very hard to get the smell out of wool rugs. Speaking from experience, like I've had to throw out wool rugs, and even though I got them professionally cleaned, you can't really, unless they're really specialist cleaned where they soak them and wring them out. Like a basic kind of cleaning does not get smells out of thick wool rugs. But like polyester, polypropylene rugs, you can kind of power hose and they'd be kind of okay.
And a short pile rug, pretty easy to clean. And a big, large one that covers a huge area, like you're laughing.
Yeah. And there's such nice ones now, and they're not that expensive as well.
Yeah. And then temporary flooring is a great one. Yeah. I know you have this at the moment. You have some laminate flooring where you're not planning to have it permanently.
Yeah. In the kitchen, we put in a really cheap laminate. I'm talking like 10 or 12 euros a square metre or something like that. And it's fine. Like, we fitted it ourselves. It's pretty simple to fit. That's a nice temporary option, but absolutely fine for kind of medium term as well. Like, it's still fine. Besides, maybe the print is a little bit worn in parts. But that's one option. But also, like, we've original floorboards here, so we just sanded those because I just couldn't get the smells out of the original carpets that were all over the house, and I didn't want to. They were just disgusting. So we took them up and just resanded them and stained them. So that's given us kind of a bit of time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And vinyl, so what was lino, what's kind of now vinyl, used to be such a, it used to be really cheap. You'd know immediately that it was kind of a roll of lino, but actually it's gotten really good now, and it's
Really
still
good.
not that expensive. And it can, like, it's super easy to lay down. Like, you can literally just cut it with, a really heavy duty scissors or an X-Acto knife to your own layout, and it's down. You kind of just, you don't necessarily even have to glue it. You kind of just fit it in. And that's a really, really good option for a temporary floor covering. You just go in, buy a roll of it, or get a cut to your specification, and down you go.
Yeah.
Another one that I love as well, back to the topic of kind of temporary, doing up your kitchen temporarily, and we spoke about this as well before, is covering your countertops with contact paper or a vinyl wrap. It's sturdier than you think. Like, don't go chopping your vegetables on it. Don't do that on most countertops. But it's sturdier than you think. It's a really effective way of just giving your countertops an instant kind of upfresh, or an uplift, or freshen up, and very, very low cost.
There's an Irish company, I've forgotten the name now. I think it's like Cover Style or Cover something. It's Cover something anyway. We'll put it in the show notes, but they're wrapping whole kitchens and countertops, and like, it's a serious transformation and a fraction of the cost versus putting in a new kitchen. So definitely something to be thinking about. And tiling as well. You can get really good deals on tiles. And like, say for us here, there was no shower upstairs. It was just a bath. And so we wanted to put in a shower over the bath, but the walls, wouldn't have been waterproof or whatever. So we just tiled with basic subway tiles the shower area. And like, they were super, super cheap, easy to do. But like, in general, even if they're more medium, long-term ones, I think you can get great deals on tiles if you shop around to get clearance stuff. So it's definitely somewhere to save, I think, unless you're like you and absolutely obsessed with very specific tiles.
I do love tiles. I very, very much love
But like
it's my splurge area.
Yeah, like we were saying in one of the other episodes, like, you kind of know where you want to splurge, right? Like, everyone's got their few things, like, but I think tiles are something.
Or you will if you do your budget tracker properly, and then you'll be able to get the things you want.
It's definitely more of a design choice, I think, tiles, whereas you can still get really good quality tiles for quite cheap, I think. Do you know?
Yeah,
that
definitely.
Yeah.
And like, you can make, if you're not so mad about tiles, but you want something that looks cool, you can make, very low cost tiles look amazing with, colour grout again, for example, or laying them in different patterns or whatever it might be. Even just white tiles and black grout, like, looks really
Laying
cool.
them in different patterns has such a major impact. I saw it actually. Totally. I have a whole Pinterest board like dedicated to this, just tile pattern ideas, because they're the most basic tiles. But then when they're laid in different patterns, like, I've seen ones done in like a double herringbone, or like a kind of a double kind of vertical zigzag kind of thing. But they look so cool. It looks like a totally different tile, completely makes them way more expensive and way more custom looking, I think.
Yeah. And again, that back to like either just black tile or white tiles and black grout, or vice versa, if you want to go, it's a bit 80s looking or something. But even just two different colour tiles, like, again, very, very basic tiles, but in a geometric pattern or in something creative, like, if you it can be really easy to do and super low cost way to get very, very high impact, like entranceway, for example, or backsplash or something like that.
Yeah, I might tag a few. I think we spoke about it before, but like, just the tiling pages that we were following, that like, there's just such good inspiration there, because I feel like you really need to have the vision for some of these. But like, I think, if you look at some of those, you can really do something really impactful for pretty reasonable, I would say. Yeah. So I suppose then, what about, I think shopping in general.
One more actually very cost effective thing, is curtains, because curtains and blinds can be off the wall expensive,
So
like, really, really expensive, and getting them made to measure. But if you're anyway handy, first of all, you can potentially make your own curtains, and you got some fabulous fabric in Kildare.
Newbridge,
the fabric outlet.
Newbridge Fabric Outlet, and they actually have kind of people, they've contacts for people who make curtains. So I got 3 sets of curtains for like big sash windows for like €900, and I think they would have been about €2,000 per set anywhere else, pretty much. So if you're willing to kind of dig around those places like the Fabric Outlet and stuff like that, and get maybe kind of end of line fabrics, and you're lucky, you can save a lot there.
Yeah.
If you've if you've standard size windows, there's really good pre-made stuff now as well.
There is.
I suppose
I actually really like Harry Curry for a lot of curtains. They just have lovely stuff. Yeah, they have a huge range. It's very good value.
And I think the blackout ones, they have a nice weight to them, so they always kind of look that bit more expensive, I think.
Yeah, agreed. And as long as they're long enough, like, don't go too short. That's the one thing I would say with curtains. But as long as they're the right width, if they're too long, you can get them taken up, or you can even just use something like Wonder Web, that iron-on hemming and stuff. That's really, really good.
Yeah. Talking about Well, one smart kind of shopping strategy is going to those places, like those outlets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, you know, bulk buying, I think, you know, if you have 3 bathrooms, trying not to get like, go to 10 different bathroom places, you're more likely to get a deal if you get it all from one place. And
tell them that you're going to be
exactly
buying 3 and what can they do for you.
Exactly.
That's my favorite line when negotiating.
Yeah.
I'm going to be buying 3. What can you do for me?
And in my experience, bathroom places vary wildly for the same brands. I feel like sometimes the sales in bathroom places just cycle and they go, you know, from place to place. So I don't know. I always feel like bathrooms always has a bit of wiggle room in their pricing.
Definitely.
So like one brand mightn't be on sale where you're buying it, but ask them. Say, I'm looking at this stuff. I've seen it for this price somewhere else. Can you do any better? And I'm sure if you're buying a load of other stuff, you've got much better kind of bargaining chip, you know, with the shop, I think. But always look for sales and discounts as well. Like, as in, like, overall, I think just like look for those kind of sales periods. And if it's something that you can buy that the place are kind of comfortable keeping for a little while until you need it, or, you know, it doesn't all have to be shipped aside or whatever immediately, why not buy it when it's on sale, you know?
Yeah. Just be careful with the sales, because I find sometimes you can go into the January sales or whatever it might be and you end up buying loads of things that you don't need or you think you might want in your new house. So I would just be very strict with your list when you're going in and make sure that like you're going in with a mission. You're getting the thing that you need and then you are getting out. Put the blinkers on. Like don't buy that statement armchair that you think might be cool in your new room because you'll find
an impulse buy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure. No. I agree with you there. But more the bigger stuff like bathrooms and stuff, I think there can be good kind of sales and discounts from kind of buying all of them in one place, but buying at the right time as well.
Another one on that, avoiding impulse purchases or making the wrong purchase or whatever, is when I was shopping for all my finishes, I had a bag, like a go bag, that I would grab and take with me when I was going shopping. And that had a paint sample of the paint that was on all of my walls, fabric samples from my main pieces of furniture, so my sofa, you know, my built-in banquette, all that kind of stuff, a measuring tape, crucial, and make sure you have everything measured, like where your sofa needs to go, where you're thinking of putting that corner table. Like I definitely can't eyeball things. I need to have the measurement right. Like, you know, it needs to be really right. So just make sure that you're really clear on that. I had tile samples, I had everything, because the color, it might seem right to you when you're in the shop and then you get home and it's just a bit off. And that can really ruin a room, is like having almost the right colors, but they don't actually quite go together.
Yeah.
Bring the samples, hold them up against it and measure it and just make sure that it is right before you buy it. Otherwise you end up with this like cushions that you were like, oh, but they looked kind of grand. They're kind of grand and they're close enough, and then you don't want to get rid of them and you can't return them because they were on sale, you know.
Yeah, no, 100%. And as much as you like to think you can, no one can remember the actual shade. Because say you're, just for example, I was looking for throw cushions for my couch and I didn't have the swatch with me. And like, then I was looking at these throw cushions and I was like, that's the colour of my couch. But you're always a bit off. You're always a bit off. When you're, when you're kind of presented with a wall of colour, it'll just throw you. You can't know for sure. But like, I like your idea as well. Do you remember you were saying as well to take a picture of, say something you can't move, like your sofa or whatever, to put, was it like red, blue, yellow on it? And then it kind of rebalances kind of what you can see. Or sometimes I take a picture of stuff with my hand because I kind of know the colour of my hand and I can kind of judge off it a little bit better.
You know, if
you can't take the sofa with you, like if it's a fixed large piece or something like that. But yeah, I love the idea of having your swatches and all that to hand if you can at all. And always ask like a furniture shop or whatever, if you've a sofa order, can you have a swatch of the fabric?
Always.
Chances are you
it's
can.
Just, it will save you from just the wrong purchase. It'll save you from buying things twice. Yeah. And return costs and time and everything. Yeah. So please do it.
Okay. And then I suppose this is really, it's not budget friendly, but it might be saving you money in the long term. And we kind of touched on some of this in our last grants episode, but energy efficient upgrades and stuff like that, if you have the money up front, it's great to put in kind of stuff immediately, or else put in the provisions for it to put them in later on. So for example, what I was saying earlier was that we might put in solar panels later if we don't have the budget for it, but just putting in the provisions for it, that it's not a huge job then when it comes to it. But those ones, like, you know, insulation in your attic is relatively inexpensive, could have a huge impact on kind of your heating costs and stuff like that, upgrading your lighting we spoke about, and just switching to LEDs where it's not LEDs. And if you are installing thermostats, consider smart thermostats and stuff like that, or smart meters in your electricity and stuff, which are all getting installed at the moment. Just so you can track some of that usage. It'll probably save you in the long term if you can.
Yeah. So when you're doing out your budget, you know that they're not the places you cut.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they'll save you money in the long term.
Yeah.
Like some things you buy and then that's it, the money's gone. But some things you buy and actually it does save you.
Yeah, you reap the benefits for years and years. Yeah.
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 Solar panels are an interesting one. And again, we have an episode on this in our grants episode a few episodes back, and there's loads of information there. But it's a funny one because when I was renovating in 2020, I looked at solar panels, and my roof is really small, so the area that I could cover, it wasn't really worth, the payoff period was something like 25 or 28 years or something like that, and I couldn't justify the price at the time.
Yeah.
But now they've gotten so efficient, they're so much better, that I'm so glad I didn't buy them.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes it's hard to know, like, do you pull the trigger now? How much better are things going to get? Like, electronics are such an important one of that. Like, you mentioned before about having a TV. Don't have an alcove like cut out for the shape of your TV, because you are going to upgrade your TV. You're going to get a different TV. You know, at some point you're going to get different kitchen appliances. Anything electronic like that, it changes and comes along so much. So having the basics in place is great, and then being smart about knowing, is now the right time to buy it, or should I hold off for a few years? Is this likely to advance a lot in a few years?
Yeah.
It's always good advice.
Yeah, and if you're unsure, maybe just putting in the wiring or provisions or something like that is the right thing then. It's the right choice to make for now.
Especially if it's newer technology, I suppose. If it's something very established, you're probably fine. But if it's newer, maybe just think about whether it might be worth holding off for a few years. Because I'm going to get them now, and I'm so glad that I didn't get them, 4 years ago, because they're just so much better and so much cheaper. And
yeah. The payback would have been way shorter. Yeah, definitely. And grants will kind of make that decision for you one way or the other as well, won't they? If the grants aren't great, or the grants are absolutely fantastic, maybe then it's the right decision to put them in,
And that's another money saving tip. Go back and listen to our grants episode.
Yeah.
It's full of information. Loads there.
It's free money, guys. It's free money. Just go get it.
Yeah. Where do you think you saved the most money overall?
Shopping around, I think. Well, I suppose, taking DIY out of it, because if we were to kind of estimate the amount of work we put in terms of DIY, it was probably worth a huge chunk. But other than that, I think it was pre-COVID when we bought everything, so we shopped around a lot. So far as we got even a lot of our bathroom stuff from the UK, because the price was just, wasn't comparable down here. So we got a lot from the north, or a lot from the UK. So that saved us a lot. But I think, DIY and shopping around. What about you?
One tip actually for shopping around that I did was, as we mentioned, I love tiles, and I splashed out in tiles, and I got them from the UK. Now, this is pre-Brexit and pre-COVID, so it wasn't as expensive even as it is now. But I went on, I think it was a Facebook group, and found somebody else who was buying tiles from the same place that I was buying them, because the shipment cost was insane. And usually with items like that, if you're buying them from abroad, you typically have to pay shipment costs per pallet.
Yeah.
So whether you fill a pallet or not, you're
yeah.
paying for the pallet. And I didn't fill a pallet, and I didn't need to fill a pallet. So I found someone else who was planning to buy from the same place, and we split the shipping cost then. So that's a really good idea. Just go around and say, I'm planning to buy a shipment. If you're buying somewhere abroad that has expensive shipping, and do check that out, factor that in when you're making your budget. Is it going to be expensive shipping? That was a big one.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think where I saved the most was, do you know what? I was living in the house before it was renovated, which is harder maybe with a family. But in 2019, 2020, I was living on my own. The house was when I say derelict, it hadn't been occupied for years. It didn't have central heating. It didn't have hot water. It did have a toilet, but it was an outhouse. It was damp, and there was loads of things wrong with it. But I spent a good bit of time doing all the things we mentioned there, like putting down lino, laying down rugs, putting up a bit of wallpaper, treating the damp and the mold, making it livable, showering in my gym instead of at home. And that saved me so much money, and living in it until the very last minute. And it's another potential, I suppose, if you're doing up a very big house, is there an option to do it section by section? Is there a way to do it where you don't necessarily have to move out? Because rent while renovating or waiting for renovation is a huge amount of money.
And look, when you're doing a big renovation, there's no doubt a builder will want you out, because it'll make it easier for them, 100%. But maybe there's a kind of a turning point, or handover you can do for part of the house or something, or maybe you can work with them to say, can we get at least like the kitchen, bathroom and 1 bedroom done or something like that, and then other finishes can come later that you can move back in, maybe at a kind of builder's finish or something like that, because we all know we have to save on rents at the moment because they're insane. So like, yeah, it's something, if you're not doing a major renovation, maybe you can do it kind of room by room if you're not doing a full rewire, full replumb, which usually requires you to be out of the house for some period of time at least.
Yeah.
Or if you're insulating all the walls and all the walls are being knocked down and stuff like that, you kind of really can't.
Then you have to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe there's a sweet spot where you can kind of agree to move back in, you know, that you have a drop dead date that you're renting somewhere for 3 months or whatever, something like that. Something to definitely think about and talk to the builder about early on. How soon do you think we could move back in at least a part of the house?
That could be worth it.
Yeah, definitely could be worth it in the long run.
I think we have saved you all the money that we can save you. If there's any more tips.
Yeah, any more tips,
saved, let us know
definitely
on
send us a
Instagram.
DM.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to go through it again in a few months. Because since I spoke to you last, I have my planning.
Yes, we should have started with that.
I know.
Huge news.
Huge news.
So
yeah,
many
I'll be
exciting
looking
updates
for
coming on your
all
Instagram.
the cost saving tips. So if anyone's got them, send me a DM. If we missed any, please send me a DM. I'll share them. And I'll use them. Yeah.
Hopefully that was useful. Let us know.
We'll talk to you again soon.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
If you found that episode useful, please do us a huge favour by giving us a like and a few stars, and especially click that subscribe button, and that'll make sure that you get a notification for our next episode. Thank you.